We often blame our environment for how we feel. We assume that if we could just remove the external pressure, our system would naturally settle. But we've all had the experience of sitting in a quiet, still room and being unable to fully relax. I'm Dr. Danielle Oyler, and this is Stress Rewired. In our last discussion, we defined coherence as an emergent physiological pattern, a state that occurs when competing signaling demands are removed. But that raises a critical question. What happens when the environment is perfectly still, yet the system remains fragmented? Today, we move beyond external stressors and into the mechanics of internal signal load, exploring why your biology continues to struggle for coordination even in the absence of external threat. Attention acts as a filter. It determines which signals are prioritized for processing, but it is the evaluation that defines the quality of that processing. Evaluation introduces a reference point, a benchmark for what the system should be experiencing. Once you initiate this comparison, the system shifts into a continuous feedback loop. You aren't just processing external stimuli, you are processing a mental model of yourself, and your system is trying to reconcile the two. Consider the moments before an interview or a high-stakes meeting. You feel physical sensations of anxiety, a rapid heart rate, shallow breathing, and a sense of unease. Perhaps you immediately generate a model. I should feel calm and confident. Because you are currently feeling anxious, your brain perceives a massive predictive error, a significant gap between your actual physiological state and your desired reference point. Your system immediately launches an intensive search for resolution. It tries to fix the anxiety by mentally forcing yourself to calm down or by hyper-focusing on the discomfort. This act of constant checking, this internal monitoring, becomes a loud, persistent signal. It requires so much processing power that it takes precedence over rhythmic, autonomic functions like heart rate variability and steady breathing. Now, you aren't just feeling anxious, you are actively fragmenting your own physiology by trying to force a state that doesn't match your current biological reality. And this is the predictive search, a relentless attempt to close a gap that in the moment cannot be closed through thought alone. To understand why this is so draining, we can dive deeper into our brain and body's communication. The body operates bottom up. Your physiology sends data like muscle tension or heart rate to your brain, which then constructs a feeling of anxiety or readiness. When we try to think our way out of anxiety, we're using a top-down strategy. Or, in other words, using higher level cognitive centers to try and command the lower level systems to change. At a physiological level, coherence depends on unified signaling. Your heart, breathing, and blood pressure function best under a singular, consistent directive. When you are caught in that predictive search, those systems are bombarded by conflicting instructions. Your autonomic nervous system is trying to handle the reality of the situation, the current state, while your conscious evaluation is trying to override and change that response. You are effectively forcing your system to serve two different goals at once, which makes smooth, rhythmic coordination impossible. This brings us to a critical point regarding the cost of this internal state. In the field of psychoneuroimmunology, we look at allostatic load, the physiological wear and tear that occurs when a system is forced to maintain stability through constant change. A fragmented system is an inefficient one. When you are in that loop of predictive error, your regulatory branches are essentially arguing. This creates a state of chronic, low-level sympathetic activation. Because your body expects a high energy demand, it keeps cortisol levels elevated, which eventually blunts your system's ability to turn off the stress response. Excessive glucose and oxygen are consumed to maintain that state of conflict. Over time, this chronic fragmentation signals to the immune system that the body is in a state of emergency, even if you are just sitting in stillness. That results in taxing your own biological resources to maintain a mental standard of how you should be. We can pause for a moment and examine this in real time. Stop for just a moment and notice an area in your body where you're holding tension. Are you holding that tension in awareness? Or are you holding a judgment about that tension? Notice if you internally correct the fact that your shoulders are tight. Observe the subtle feeling of trying to force yourself to relax. That subtle friction, that is the internal mismatch signal. And when you sit with that experience of correction, you can feel how much effort that evaluation actually requires. Fragmentation is not just feeling stressed. It is a state where the system is stuck in an internal search for resolution, and that resolution cannot be found as long as the search itself remains active. Coherence cannot be forced into a system that is currently processing too many competing demands. So as you move through your day, notice when that internal static arises. But don't try to fix the feeling. Simply observe the complexity. Is your system responding to the world around you, or is it busy processing a mismatch signal from within? Next, we'll look at one of the most distinct ways these systems can begin to realign through the relationship between breathing and heart rhythm, and how that coordination can further stabilize or become disrupted. If you're interested in exploring how these patterns shift in practice, this is the focus of my work: how attention, physiology, and regulation interact over time, and how that changes through experience. You can find more information through the link in the description.